Good morning. You might remember from our last conversation, we talked about what I called the crisis of discourse. In other words, people really aren't talking about the most consequential event in human history, which is to say, the degradation, the destruction of our life support system, our biosphere. We're not really talking about it. Some people are, but in general, most of us are avoiding the subject. It's a difficult conversation to have. And like all difficult conversations, it's something that we really need to address. So I'm really curious about this, and I wonder about what gets in our way. Why aren't we addressing this? And the first answer I have on that is that this is unfamiliar to us. This is an unprecedented situation. This has never happened before in human history, and we don't have experience in talking about these kinds of things. We have plenty of experience talking about local things, things that happen in our immediate area, with one another, with maybe our local habitat, that kind of thing. But this is planetary, and we really don't have a history of talking about this. So it's brand new. No wonder people avoid it. We don't have training in dealing with difficult conversations. Any therapist in the world will tell you that. The people in relationship often avoid difficult subjects, and they carry on as if everything's normal, but they don't address the big issue that's underlying. We sweep things under the rug. I think that's a human inclination. But there's also stress involved. So we look at our ecological predicament, and it's a major stressor. You look at a map of the world, and you look at the habitat destruction in all the various forms, and naturally, you're going to have a stress response. So what happens next? Well, everybody's heard of the fight-flight response. We either fight the thing that's threatening us, or we flee from it. But there's two more F's on this. So we fight, we flee, we freeze, or we fawn. So in other words, if we freeze, that's obvious. We refuse to talk about the difficult subject. Or we fawn, we make ourselves subordinate to somebody else who is driving the narrative. And we can see that all over the place now, can't we? People are in a state of paralysis, and we're not moving ahead with the conversation. We're not speaking up. Now, stress has another way that it impacts this, and that's reversion to the familiar. This is a common behavior in not only humans, but all mammals. If you're faced with a highly ambiguous situation, a dangerous situation, what do? Well, you go back to the last place where you had an understanding. You go back to the last place that was familiar to you. That's a common strategy, and sometimes it's a good strategy, right? You go back, you recoup, then you go out and you engage the world again. But now we're doing it big time. We're reverting to the familiar. And we're doing it in a way that's very maladaptive. We're reverting to familiar culture. We're reverting to consumer culture. We're going back to the last thing that we knew. And in the process, we are avoiding the difficult conversation. Now, closely related to that is this epidemic of learned helplessness. So some of us do engage. We try to move the needle on the world. We try to work as activists in the world. And if you've tried this in any way at all, you learn that defeats are really common. It's very difficult to change things at the level of society or culture. And you lose, and after a while you lapse into this state of learned helplessness, which means that you start to generalize failure. You say, well, I failed. Now I'm probably going to fail again. So now what do? You stop talking. You stop engaging. And that's a really dangerous place to be. And my take is that a lot of us are living in that situation now, living in that condition now. And finally, there's this assumption of powerlessness. So we look at these big, large-scale challenges of the day, and then we compare that to our own personal capabilities, and we say, well, I don't have any personal power. I don't have any political power. I don't have any economic power. I'm just a little person, and I can't move the needle on the world because look how big it is. We assume that we're powerless. And sometimes there's something to that. But that's a really dangerous attitude to hold. Because, number one, it's an assumption. And number two, we all have a voice. We all have the ability to enter into conversation with others. And we all have the ability to speak out. We all have the ability to interrupt the dominant conversation of the day. And that's where we can begin. That's where we can start to have an effect on the world. Don't generalize failure. Don't assume that you're powerless. Use your voice, however small it might happen to be. Above all, adopt a stance of relevance. It's essential now, not just for the world, but for our own personal welfare. Live a life of responsibility and relevance, and maybe you'll make a difference, but it's just simply a better way to live.